My name is Hannah Mitchell, 32 years old, and I work as a freelance graphic designer in Portland, Oregon. That Tuesday evening at my parents' house in the suburbs of Beaverton, surrounded by the smell of my mom's famous pot roast and the sound of wine glasses clinking, I learned that family can cut deeper than strangers ever could. My older brother Derek was sitting across from me at the dining table, his wife Melissa beside him, both of them dressed like they'd just come from a corporate photo shoot. I had just set my new iPhone 17 Pro on the table next to my plate, the deep titanium blue catching the overhead light. I was proud of it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'd saved for months, finally treating myself after landing 3 major clients in a row. My parents were asking about my latest project, a rebranding campaign for a local coffee roaster, when Derek reached across the table without asking and picked up my phone. He held it up to the light, squinting like a jeweler inspecting a fake diamond. Then he laughed, that sharp, performative laugh he'd perfected in business school. "This is just a cheap knockoff," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Hannah, where did you even get this? Some sketchy website?" The room went quiet. My fork paused midair. My mother looked confused. My father glanced between us, uncertain. Melissa smirked into her wine glass. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and forced a smile. "It's real, Derek. I bought it at the Apple store downtown." He turned it over in his hands, shaking his head like a disappointed teacher. "No way. The weight's off. The camera module looks weird. I've seen fakes before. This is definitely one of them." He set it down with a dismissive thud. "You got scammed, sis." My cheeks burned. "It's not fake," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "Sure it's not," he replied, leaning back in his chair with a grin. "Look, I get it. Freelancing doesn't exactly pay Apple prices. There's no shame in buying budget tech. Just don't pretend it's the real thing." My mom tried to interject. "Derek, that's enough." But he wasn't done. He pulled out his own iPhone 17 Pro Max, the larger, shinier version, and placed it next to mine like he was presenting evidence in court. "See the difference? This is the real deal. I actually have a career that can afford it." That word, career, landed like a slap. As if what I did wasn't real work. As if my late nights designing logos and websites and brand identities didn't count because I didn't sit in a corner office wearing a suit. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stared at my phone sitting there on the table like a piece of evidence in a trial I hadn't agreed to attend. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly and changed the subject to something about the Blazers game. Melissa whispered something to Derek and they both laughed quietly. And I sat there, smiling politely, cutting my pot roast into smaller and smaller pieces, wondering when exactly my brother had started measuring my worth by the things I owned. That night when I got home to my small studio apartment in the Pearl District, I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the edge of my bed holding that phone, the one I'd been so excited about just hours earlier, and felt the weight of something much heavier than titanium and glass. Shame. Not because the phone was fake, it wasn't, but because my own brother had made me feel small in a room full of people who were supposed to love me. I replayed the moment over and over. The way he grabbed it without permission. The way he announced his judgment like a verdict. The way everyone just sat there and let it happen. My mind drifted back to something that had happened 3 months earlier at Derek's housewarming party. He and Melissa had just bought a massive craftsman-style home in the West Hills, the kind of place with vaulted ceilings and a wine cellar. I'd brought a handmade housewarming gift, a custom illustration of their new house that I'd spent hours on, matted and framed. Derek had opened it in front of all his friends, looked at it for about 2 seconds, and said, "Oh, cute. Very arts and crafts." Then he'd set it on a side table and never mentioned it again. I saw it later that night in the garage, leaning against a box of old tennis rackets. But his college buddy Matt, a quiet guy who worked in environmental law, had pulled me aside later and said, "That drawing is incredible. You really captured the soul of the place. I bet they'll treasure it. I'd smiled and thanked him, brushing it off. But now, sitting alone in my apartment, I remembered the way Matt had looked at my work, really looked at it, like it mattered. Like I mattered. I spent the next few days moving through my projects like a shadow. My clients were happy. My designs were solid. But every time I picked up my phone, I felt a flicker of that shame again, like Derek's words had stained it. On Thursday afternoon, I got a text from my mom. Mom, your father and I feel terrible about Tuesday. Derek didn't mean it the way it sounded. Me, it's okay, Mom. I know how he is. Mom, he's just stressed with work. You know how competitive his firm is. He didn't mean to hurt you. But he did mean it. That was the part she didn't want to see. Derek had always been like this, the golden child, the one with the MBA and the six-figure salary and the perfect wife. And I'd always been the artsy one, the dreamer, the one who chose passion over a pension plan. To him, that made me less than. By Friday, my sadness had shifted into something sharper. I wasn't going to beg my brother to respect me. I wasn't going to defend my career or my phone or my choices to someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth his approval. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. If he thought I was struggling, living small, barely getting by, then maybe it was time to show him exactly how wrong he was. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my portfolio, updated my website, and reached out to 2 potential clients I'd been too nervous to approach before. One was a boutique hotel chain. The other was a tech startup looking for a rebrand. I didn't do it for Derek. I did it because I was tired of shrinking myself to fit into his version of success. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to build something so undeniable that even he couldn't dismiss it. I spent the next week pouring myself into work with a focus I hadn't felt in months. The boutique hotel chain, Haven & Co., responded within 2 days. They wanted to see a pitch deck by the following Monday. The tech startup, a company called Greenloop that developed sustainable packaging solutions, scheduled a video call for Thursday. I worked late into the nights, my studio apartment glowing blue from my laptop screen, coffee cups accumulating on my desk like a skyline of my own ambition. For the first time since that dinner, I felt like myself again. Not the version of me that sat quietly while Derek made jokes at my expense, but the version who knew exactly what she was capable of. On Sunday morning, I met my best friend Kara for brunch at a small cafe in Northwest Portland called the Wandering Goat. Kara had been my roommate in college, back when we were both broke art students eating ramen and dreaming about the future. Now she worked as a social media manager for a local nonprofit, and she was the only person who truly understood the particular kind of exhausting that came with creative work. I told her everything about the dinner, about Derek's comment, about how it had somehow lit a fire under me that I didn't know I needed. She listened quietly, sipping her oat milk latte, her dark curls pulled back in a loose bun. When I finished, she set down her cup and looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. Hannah, your brother is a walking inferiority complex with a luxury car, she said flatly. He tears you down because watching you succeed doing what you love terrifies him. He's trapped in a job he probably hates, married to a woman who measures worth in square footage, and you're out here living a life that actually means something. I laughed despite myself. That's a little harsh. Is it though? She leaned forward. You've been freelancing for what, 4 years now? You've built a client base from nothing. You work from home in your pajamas half the time and still make enough to live in the Pearl District. Meanwhile, Derek's drowning in a mortgage he can't afford, working 80-hour weeks to impress people who don't care about him. Who's really winning here? Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. I hadn't thought about it that way. Derek had always seemed so successful, so put together, that I'd never questioned whether he was actually happy. Do you think he's jealous? I asked quietly. I think he's miserable, Kara said. And miserable people need someone to look down on so they don't have to look at themselves. Don't let him be that person for you. As we walked out of the cafe into the crisp Portland drizzle, Kara nudged me. You know who else was at that housewarming party? Matt, Derek's friend. The lawyer guy. I glanced at her. Yeah, why? She grinned. Because he's been asking about you. What? Kara pulled out her phone and showed me a DM on Instagram. It was from Matt Rivera. The message was from 3 days ago. Hey Kara, I hope this isn't weird, but I've been thinking about that illustration Hannah made for Derek and Melissa. Does she do commissions? I'd love to hire her for a project. Also, and this is probably too forward, but is she seeing anyone? My heart did a small flip. I hadn't thought about Matt much since that party, but now that Kara mentioned it, I remembered the way he'd looked at my artwork. The way he'd actually asked me questions about my process, about what inspired me, like he genuinely cared about the answers. He's sweet, Kara said. Respectful, stable job, no weird red flags. And he clearly sees what your brother doesn't. I bit my lip, trying not to smile too wide. Did you respond? Not yet, she said with a sly grin. I wanted to ask you first. But Hannah, this guy is good people. And he's single. The idea of reaching out to Matt felt both terrifying and oddly right. Not because I needed a man to validate me, but because the idea of spending time with someone who actually valued my work, who saw me as more than Derek's artsy little sister, felt like a breath of fresh air I hadn't realized I was suffocating without. Tell him I'd love to talk about a commission, I said slowly. And maybe, if it comes up naturally, you can mention that I'm very single and very available for coffee. Kara squealed and immediately started typing. By the time I got home that afternoon, I had a new Instagram message waiting. It was from Matt. Hi Hannah, Kara told me you might be open to a commission project. I'm working with a nonprofit that helps formerly incarcerated individuals reintegrate into the workforce, and we're rebranding. Your style would be perfect. Also, and I hope this doesn't sound too forward, I'd love to grab coffee sometime and talk about it. Or just talk. No pressure either way. I read the message 3 times, my stomach fluttering in a way it hadn't in months. Then I typed back a response that felt bold and honest and completely unlike the version of me who'd sat silently at that family dinner. Hi Matt, I'd love to hear more about the project, and yes to coffee. How's this Thursday? His reply came within minutes. Thursday's perfect. I know a great spot in Selwood. Looking forward to it. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling of my apartment, a small smile spreading across my face. Derek thought I was struggling, barely scraping by with a fake phone and a fake career. But while he was busy tearing me down, I was quietly building something real. And maybe, just maybe, I was about to build something even better than I'd imagined. Thursday came faster than I expected. I met Matt at a coffee shop called Sterling Coffee Roasters in Selwood, a cozy neighborhood spot with exposed brick walls and the kind of warm lighting that made everything feel softer, kinder. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He stood up when he saw me, and I noticed for the first time how tall he was, how his smile reached his eyes in a way that felt genuine and unguarded. I wasn't sure what you'd want, so I got you a cappuccino, he said, gesturing to one of the cups. But if that's wrong, I'm happy to get you something else. It's perfect, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Thank you. We talked for nearly 2 hours, and it surprised me how easy it was. He told me about the nonprofit, about how he'd started volunteering there after law school and eventually joined their board. He explained the rebranding project with a passion that made it clear this wasn't just work for him, it was something he believed in. I showed him my portfolio on my iPad, walking him through past projects, explaining my process. He asked thoughtful questions, leaned in when I spoke, and never once checked his phone. It was such a stark contrast to every interaction I'd had with Derek in the past decade that it almost made me emotional. When we finally shifted away from work talk, the conversation flowed even easier. He told me about growing up in Eugene, about his parents who still lived there and ran a small bookstore. I told him about my own childhood in Beaverton, about how I'd always been the creative one in a family that valued spreadsheets over sketchbooks. I didn't mean to bring up Derek, but somehow it slipped out. My brother thinks I'm wasting my life doing this, I said, gesturing vaguely at my iPad. He thinks freelancing isn't a real career. Matt's expression darkened slightly. Derek said that? Not in those exact words, I admitted. But he made it pretty clear at dinner last week. He grabbed my new phone and told everyone it was a cheap knockoff. Said I got scammed because freelancing doesn't pay Apple prices. Matt shook his head slowly, his jaw tight. That's cruel. And for the record, completely untrue. You're one of the most talented designers I've seen. The work you do actually matters. It helps businesses tell their stories. That's not nothing. Something in my chest loosened, a knot I didn't realize I'd been carrying. Thank you, I said quietly. He hesitated, then added, Derek's always been like that, you know. Even in college. He needs to be the smartest guy in the room, the most successful, the most impressive. It's exhausting to watch. I blinked. You knew him in college? Matt nodded. We were roommates freshman year before he transferred to business school. He was obsessed with status even then. I remember he used to make fun of my major, said environmental law was for people who couldn't hack corporate law. The memory seemed to amuse him more than hurt him. Did that bother you? I mean, it stung at first, he admitted. But then I realized he was just projecting. He was miserable studying something he didn't care about, so he had to convince himself that everyone else's choices were wrong too. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the hum of the coffee shop filling the space between us. Then Matt looked at me with an intensity that made my heart skip. Hannah, can I be honest about something? Of course. I've thought about reaching out to you for months, he said. Ever since that housewarming party. When I saw that illustration you made, the way you captured not just the house but the feeling of it, I was floored. And then when Derek barely acknowledged it, I wanted to say something. But I didn't want to overstep. Why didn't you? I asked softly. Because you were there with your family, and it felt inappropriate, he said. But I kept thinking about you. About your work. About the way you listened when I talked about my job, like you actually cared. Most people's eyes glaze over when I mention nonprofit law. I laughed. Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about kerning and color theory. He grinned. See, we're perfect for each other. The words hung in the air, playful but weighted with something more. I felt my cheeks warm. As friends, he added quickly, though his smile suggested he was testing the waters. Sure, I said, matching his tone. As friends. When we finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting over the Willamette River, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. We walked slowly toward our cars, neither of us in a hurry to end the conversation. Before I could open my door, Matt turned to me. Hannah, I know this might be complicated because of Derek, but I'd really like to see you again. Not just for the project. I mean, yes for the project, but also just because I really enjoyed today. I looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt something shift inside me. Something that had been dormant for too long. I'd like that too, I said. He smiled, relieved. Good. Because I was worried I was being too forward. You're being exactly forward enough, I told him. As I drove home that evening, my phone sat in the cup holder, the same iPhone 17 Pro that Derek had dismissed as fake. But for the first time since that awful dinner, I didn't feel shame when I looked at it. I felt something else entirely. I felt like someone who was finally done shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. Over the next 3 weeks, my life transformed in ways I hadn't anticipated. The pitch to Haven & Co. went better than I'd dreamed. They loved the concept, the color palette, the entire vision I'd laid out for their rebrand. By the end of our second meeting, they'd signed a contract worth more than I'd made in the previous 6 months combined. Green Loop was equally enthusiastic, and Matt's nonprofit project was shaping up to be some of the most meaningful work I'd ever done. But the best part, the part that surprised me most, was Matt himself. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm of coffee dates that turned into dinner dates that turned into long walks along the East Bank Esplanade. He'd text me random thoughts throughout the day, articles about design trends or environmental policy, always with a note that said, "This made me think of you." He never made me feel like I had to perform or prove myself. With him, I could just exist. One Saturday afternoon, we were at his apartment in Hawthorne, a converted loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and bookshelves that covered an entire wall. I was sketching preliminary concepts for his nonprofit rebrand while he graded papers for a legal ethics course he taught part-time at Lewis and Clark. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, and there was a comfortable silence between us, the kind that only happens when two people are genuinely at ease. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text from Derek. "Derek, family dinner tomorrow at 6. Mom's making lasagna. Don't be late." I stared at the message, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. It had been nearly a month since the iPhone incident, and we hadn't spoken since. No apology, no acknowledgement, just this casual summons like nothing had happened. Matt glanced over. "Everything okay?" "It's my brother," I said. "Family dinner tomorrow. He wants me there. Do you want to go?" Matt asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just skip it, avoid the whole thing. But my mom will be disappointed if I don't show up." "She always is." Matt set down his pen and moved to sit beside me on the couch. "Can I tell you something about Derek that might help?" I nodded. "He's never going to apologize," Matt said. "Not because he doesn't know he hurt you, but because apologizing would mean admitting he was wrong. And Derek's entire identity is built on being right. I've seen him do this to other people, his ex-girlfriends, his co-workers, even his own parents. He says something cruel, waits for it to blow over, then acts like nothing happened." "You're probably right," I said quietly. "So the question isn't whether he'll apologize," Matt continued. "The question is whether you're going to keep showing up and letting him treat you this way, or whether you're going to set a boundary." His words settled over me with the weight of truth I'd been avoiding. "What would a boundary look like?" I asked. Matt shrugged. "That's up to you. Maybe it's going to dinner but leaving the moment he disrespects you. Maybe it's telling your parents you need space from him. Maybe it's showing up so confident in who you are that his opinions don't land anymore." I thought about it for a long moment, then looked down at my phone, at the message still glowing on the screen. "I'm going to go," I decided. "But I'm not going alone." Matt raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I said, turning to face him fully, "I want you to come with me. As my date." His eyes widened slightly. "Hannah, are you sure? That's going to make things complicated with Derek." "Good," I said, feeling a boldness I hadn't felt in years. "Let it be complicated. He's made me feel small for long enough. It's time he sees that I'm doing just fine without his approval." Matt studied my face for a moment, then slowly smiled. "Okay," he said. "I'm in. But just so we're clear, I'm doing this because I want to support you, not because I want to provoke your brother." "I know," I said. "But if it happens to provoke him a little, I won't complain." He laughed and pulled me closer. "You're kind of incredible when you're confident, you know that?" "I'm just getting started," I told him. That night, I texted Derek back. I'll be there. And I'm bringing someone." "Derek, who?" "You'll see." I turned off my phone and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to my family. I felt ready. Sunday evening arrived with the kind of nervous energy that makes your hands shake and your heart race. Matt picked me up at 5:30, looking calm and reassuring in a navy sweater and jeans. He squeezed my hand as we pulled up to my parents' house in Beaverton, the same craftsman-style home where I'd grown up, where 1,000 family dinners had unfolded in patterns I knew by heart. Derek's Tesla was already in the driveway. When we walked in, my mother was setting the table, her face lighting up when she saw me. Then her eyes landed on Matt, and confusion flickered across her features. "Hannah, sweetheart," she said, glancing between us. "I didn't know you were bringing someone." "Mom, this is Matt Rivera," I said confidently. "Matt, my mother Ellen." "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Mitchell," Matt said warmly, extending his hand. Derek appeared in the doorway, Melissa trailing behind him. His expression shifted the moment he recognized Matt, his college roommate, his friend. The color drained from his face, then rushed back as anger. "What is this?" Derek said, his voice tight. "Matt? What are you doing here?" "I invited him," I said simply. "He's my date." The room went silent. My father emerged from the kitchen, confused by the sudden tension. My mother looked between Derek and me like she was watching an accident unfold in slow motion. "Your date?" Derek repeated, his voice rising. "You're dating my friend?" "Ex-roommate," Matt corrected gently. "And yes, I care about your sister very much." Derek's face twisted into something ugly. "This is unbelievable. You're doing this to get back at me, Hannah. To make some pathetic point." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm doing this because Matt treats me like I matter. He sees my work as valuable. He doesn't mock me or dismiss me or grab my things and tell everyone they're fake." "The iPhone," Derek spat. "You're still hung up on that?" "It was a joke." "It wasn't a joke," I said firmly. "It was cruel. And I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt when you treat me like I'm less than you." My mother gasped softly. "Hannah, Derek, please." But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone, the same iPhone 17 Pro Derek had humiliated me over, and set it on the dining table. "This is real, Derek. I bought it with money I earned doing work I love. Work that actually makes a difference to people. And you know what else is real? The $50,000 contract I just signed with Haven and Company. The rebrand I'm doing for a tech startup. The nonprofit project I'm leading with Matt. I don't need your approval anymore." Derek stood frozen, his jaw working soundlessly. Melissa looked uncomfortable, suddenly very interested in her wine glass. My father looked at Derek with something I'd never seen before, disappointment. Matt stood beside me, solid and steady, his hand resting lightly on my lower back. "You always made me feel like I wasn't enough," I continued, my voice quieter now but no less firm. "Like my choices were wrong because they didn't look like yours. But I'm happy, Derek. Can you say the same?" The silence that followed was deafening. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out of the room. Melissa hesitated, then followed him. We heard the front door slam moments later. My mother looked stricken. "Hannah, I had no idea he made you feel that way." "I know, Mom," I said gently. "But now you do." My father cleared his throat, his eyes misty. "We're proud of you, sweetheart. We always have been." The dinner that followed was quiet but warm, just the four of us. Matt charmed my parents with stories about his work, and my mother kept touching my hand across the table like she was making sure I was really there, really okay. When we left that night, Matt drove us to a viewpoint overlooking the city, the lights of Portland glittering below like scattered stars. He turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You were amazing in there," he said softly. I was terrified, I admitted. But I meant every word. "I know you did," he said. "That's what made it powerful." We sat in comfortable silence, the city breathing below us, and I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't about making Derek suffer. It was about refusing to suffer for him anymore. It was building a life so full of purpose and joy that his opinions became background noise, irrelevant and small. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Mom, your father and I want you to know we love you. We're sorry we didn't see what was happening sooner. Derek left early. We'll talk to him." I smiled and typed back a simple thank you. Then I turned off my phone and looked at Matt, at this man who'd seen me for who I truly was from the very beginning. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, home felt like a place I actually wanted to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.